on the cards, literally.
Let's do it.
I'm with John Tomsett, head teacher of Huntington School in York. And John, so you obviously being a head teacher over the last 9 months or so, a bit of a doddle, fairly straightforward.
Sarah, Sarah says no sound on the YouTube.
I'm with John Tomsett, head teacher of Huntington School in York. And John, so you obviously being a head teacher over the last 9 months or so, a bit of a doddle, fairly straightforward.
It's been quite an extraordinary time, and in many ways it's been great to get your teeth into something that you can step up to your plate. You know, I'm in my 18th year as a head, and you feel like you've seen everything now. You know, and finding out yesterday that by the 4th of January I've got to set up a testing site in my school has been extraordinary. So it's been hard, but I say what I think it's been hard, just physically hard.
Right.
As much as anything for everybody involved, because we set the school up and it's all in year group bubbles. There's lots of commuting between places, but I do 25 duties a week. And what I said to my senior team was this, is that the one thing we've got to do as a senior team is get rid of every barrier possible that's preventing our teachers teaching. Right, you kind of have a sense that you do that anyway, but we've done that in spades, and so the duty. So we have lesson changeover duty, we have morning bus duty, end of school bus duty, lunch duty, break duty. I'm the best paid toilet attendant on the planet. Right. So it's getting out there amongst it, so your teachers who teach I teach 3 periods a week, 2 periods of A-level economics and 1 period of English. The rest of my time has been dedicated to making sure everybody else who's doing the teaching can do it as well as they possibly can. I think what you also find with all the things we put in place, £26,000 worth of hand washing facilities. I don't know how much we've spent on sanitizer and paper towels, blah, 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 blah. But one of the things you find is that people have really stepped up to the plate. Right? They've been amazing. So last Thursday and Friday, peak of the pandemic, headlines across the country of chaos in schools. We have 110 teachers at Huntington, and we lost 1 day of teaching. So everybody was in school on the Thursday. On the Friday, everybody was in school bar one person who was having a test because she'd lost her hearing and thought it might be a symptom. That's unbelievable. Our attendance rates for staff this term are better than last year.
That is extraordinary.
Who would know? But I think it's about they feel completely safe. We've put in measures that have really looked after them. They know if they've got a misbehaving student, they can press the button and one of us will be along, right? Without any worry about that. You know, I don't look at them and think, you can't control the class. I go and sort it out, right? And they absolutely trust me on that. And the other thing is, and I don't ever really, I'm not a big fan of this. I think probably like you, David, that the best well-being thing I can do is sort behaviour out in the classroom.
Right.
But on my table in my office are 213 individually wrapped by the SLT mini bottles of Prosecco plus a pack of four chocolates, and every member of staff gets them, right?
I think people feel appreciative of that,
and
kind
they
of
love that. They love it, and you know, and we did one at half term for making half term, which was a bottle of beer and a tin of gin and tonic and a chocolate orange. This was a bit bit more upmarket and glitzy, but they think that's really important. So Friday morning, we've got free bacon butties. If you get into school at 8 o'clock, bacon butties, that kind of stuff has helped them massively.
Because I know you've talked about your worry about staff feeling isolated more than normally.
Yeah, and I think I've spoken to more staff this year than I've ever spoken to staff. And what I love about it as well is they ask me how I am. It's really, really interesting. How are you? I said, no, how are you? And that has just been really.
No, how are you? Yeah.
No, it's been just gorgeous. Do you know what I mean? It's just, because they know you're putting a shift in, because they see you every day. They know that 8:15 on the dot, when the buses arrive, and we don't open school till 8:15. I go onto every bus to check that everybody's been wearing a mask and looking after the driver, right? Relentlessly. And we had a letter from the bus company the other day saying thanking us because behaviour's been so brilliant this term on the buses.
Right.
500 kids come on buses. So, and the students have been great. Largely, cool. There's lots. Interestingly, there's lots we're going to keep about the new way of working around school.
Tell me about that. What will you keep?
We're going to keep 6 separate entrances for the year groups.
Yeah.
We're going to keep year group bubbles, so all the tutor groups are next to each other. We're going to we're contemplating keeping kids sat in rows.
Right. As an enforced policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As something, actually best practice, evidence-informed best practice. We are contemplating do far less practicals in science because they take up a lot of time, and you can get the same amount of learning done with a demonstration or a video.
Okay. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So I can hear some science teachers grinding their teeth.
I've done it. I did this. I did a staff meeting last night, staff briefing last night, and I put up all the thinking that we've been doing. I've been doing yes panels. What we've been doing why panels for the last 3 weeks. I presented to the whole staff, and I said, stuff in red we're stopping, stuff in green we definitely want, stuff in amber there's some debate to be had. So science practicals are in amber.
Okay. Interesting.
So there's debate to be had, and I'll always listen in the end to the experts on the ground.
So if all of your science teachers are passionate, you might budge on that.
I'll say I so don't get involved in those subject specific decisions because they know better than me, right? But and the rows, the sitting in rows is an amber.
Right. Okay.
But loads of people have said it's great. So there's lots.
It's a funny thing. I made an off the cuff comment on Twitter saying something along the lines of, I think I found all the classrooms that I've been teaching in kids being in rows makes life really straightforward, and it was such a Marmite response.
Yeah.
I was quite, I shouldn't be, but I was quite taken aback at how strongly people reacted for and against that. So it's it's a difficult one.
Yeah, so there's lots of. I think like the innovation in the battlefield in the First and Second World Wars, like there's innovations that have really worked.
Wow, and I think I think that's right. John, have you had to send many year groups home or many bubbles home?
We've had 19 student cases overall.
Right.
And 4 staff cases.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty good in a school of 1,500. Well, there's 1,740 of us under one roof every day.
Yeah.
Right? There's no other situation
currently
in the country where anybody has to do that and have responsibility for that. So the responsibility I've had every day for that is immense. And the one thing I've said to staff, which they've really taken to heart, is don't be a contact. Right? Assume everybody's got it at home, at work. Oh. Yeah, but they've done it. They've been brilliant. Right?
I took a day off this term because my wife and one of my daughters went and did a drive-through test with them, and obviously it came back negative. But normally I wouldn't, but you just think, well, it's not about me.
Yeah. And so they've been really good like that. And we've lost. There are several students in Key Stage 3, in Key Stage 4, who've had to stay at home for 3 lots of self-isolation without ever getting it. Right.
Yeah.
And this is a debate we're having across the city of York. Because I chair the York Schools and Academies Board, so we meet 2 or 3 times a week. The meeting I just had before this was a YSAB meeting. We've asked ourselves the question: has anybody who's had to self-isolate because of being a contact, any student who's had to self-isolate because they're a contact, ever contracted the virus? No.
No.
So they've all been at home for all those hours and days and weeks, and not one of them was infected.
Yeah, I think that seems to be, anecdotally, that seems to be the majority of the experience I've seen. Yeah, for sure. So just one final question on this then, John. What's your view on the current DfE stance on exams in England?
Crack on. I think they must happen.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, I don't ever want to go through what I went through last year.
No. Okay.
It was so traumatic for the students, especially.
Well, especially for your A-level students, I imagine. That was hell on wheels.
It was hellish.
Yeah.
And the debacle of it, and then the cover-ups and the refusal to release papers. If the Secretary of State didn't know what was going on,
shame on him.
Well, he wasn't doing his job. If he did, he's a liar. So either way,
damned if he does. Yeah, well, politics has been a masterclass, hasn't it, on how not to do it. It's difficult.
There we are.
There we are indeed. I like the mention there of his member of staff who lost her hearing, and I thought that might be a symptom, which of course taste and smell are. What I want to know is, did her hearing come back?
We can let's assume so.
I need to know this. But
really interesting though that he's saying there that his attendance amongst staff members has been better than the year before. That's certainly not been my experience with the schools that I've been in over the last term. Attendance has obviously been hit hard, and not through. This is people self-isolating because they have to, and in one of the schools that I've been working in, year 11 attendance in the 70%. It's not good. So obviously that is very asymmetric. Lots of schools in the country where it's much better, maybe somewhere it's worse. So. Yeah, so that was really interesting to hear John's take on the year, that there are, like the battlefield innovations in world wars, there are some things that he'll keep. And that's anecdotally, that's something I've heard from quite a few school leaders.
Yeah, things change and you see certain things work. Perhaps, it's innovation being given to you, though it doesn't sound, having more kids in rows doesn't sound like the sort of innovation we're used to hearing about. I'm interested in the number of kids who were contact traced, who didn't show any symptoms. They might still, of course, have got the virus. They
might still. Yeah, they might still.
But this is something that testing could sort out.
Yes, it is. And we've had a bit of a last-minute announcement this week. And I know that you've selected for us, Martin, a clip that you want to play for the viewers.
Yeah, it's the chair of the Public Accounts Committee, Meg Hillier, talking to Susan Ackland-Hood, who is permanent secretary of the DfE. And it's worth just viewing a bit of this.
Okay, let's have a look.
What is the message for schools about schooling in January? Are you expecting schools to reopen on the 4th or 5th of January?
So we are clear that we want to make sure that there's as much education provided to children as possible during January, and we don't have any plans to shorten the Christmas holiday.
To shorten the Christmas holiday, to lengthen the Christmas holiday?
Sorry, we don't have any plans to lengthen the Christmas holiday, I apologise.
Okay, so that's just for parents and head teachers and teachers, they will be going back as usual, you're expecting?
there are conversations going on about exactly how parents and pupils will go back at the beginning of January, but I'm afraid I can't speak to the committee about that this morning.
Okay, it's just that there's been news coverage today about a possible delay going back, which, given that many schools won't have pupils in today or tomorrow, or some will have a few in today and tomorrow, gives no time for the parents or teachers to prepare. So can you just be really clear? You're saying there's some discussions going on about how pupils will go back. Is that a staggered return for pupils? Some schools open.
I can't comment on leaks.
I didn't even know it was a leak. I was hearing news on the radio this morning, but we are at the end of term, and I wouldn't wonder, as the head of the department, can you tell us clearly and categorically what the situation is for schools, so that school leaders, parents, and pupils know what's happening on the 4th and 5th of January?
So I'm afraid that we really understand how important it is that we give clarity soon, and there are conversations going on, but I can't comment on the news stories this morning. I'm sorry.
Okay, but so you give clarity soon, so you can't give us clarity now?
No, I'm afraid I can't.
Okay. But that is, I have to say, it is ludicrous that we're at the end of term. The final day for any school in England is tomorrow, and you're sitting here today and you can't tell us any more detail about what might happen on the 4th or 5th of January next year.
I entirely accept that this is very difficult for people, but
it's not just difficult, Ms. Ackland, it's impossible. I mean, if a school is breaking up tomorrow, and that means pupils and teachers and other staff will be not in the school next week, how are they expected to plan for any changes in January?
So I think we've all experienced through the whole of the pandemic times when we've had to plan for things at very short notice, and I don't think that's ever desirable. But we've also experienced that the circumstances around us have changed very rapidly, and my ministers and others want to take note of and recognise the circumstances and to have conversations.
There we go.
It's a hot mess, Martin.
It is, isn't it? I mean, is it a sign of incompetence, perhaps not looking ahead? These discussions could have been had over time. What if this happens? What could we do? Shall we bring in testing? Shall we do this, that, and the other? And bringing heads in and organizations, whether it's MATs or local authorities or whatever, to be part of that conversation, head teachers, But it seems it's all left to the last minute, and this happens again and again and again. Now,
and that seemed to be the excuse being made there was, well, we've all had to do things at the last minute. But I think it's true to say that schools and some secondary schools have 2,000 pupils there. There's a lot of people under one roof, and there is no other organisations in the country having to contend with what schools are having to contend with at the moment. And I think many people feel frustrated that the DfE are not hardly covering themselves with glory. Some of the things like threatening to take local authorities to court and about early closure and all sorts of things like that seem absolutely bonkers. And then to cap off 2020 with these last minute plans and then refusing to even comment or speculate about what might be going to happen in January just seems very, very odd.
Yeah, it must be very frustrating for head teachers in particular, who perhaps thinking, oh, great, it's coming up to the holidays, let's have a bit of a hiatus and then let's get back to school, ready at the beginning of term, ready to educate all the kids who are there coming back on the 4th, 5th or whenever it is in January, and then to hear at the very last minute, no. It's
well,
not going to happen like that.
I spoke to a secondary school head, David Medway, today about his reaction, and he did say that his initial reaction, there's no way he could actually share that or say what it was. But then, like all head teachers and all teachers across education, they've, after we finish spitting and cursing, we've just gone, right, okay, well, let's get on with it. And we've got a little clip of him talking about his plans. Which we will hopefully see now.
What are your plans for that first week back, do you think?
Well, first of all, ours is a large secondary school, so I'm fortunate enough to have economies of scale and the team around me. Also, secondly, I'm lucky enough to be leading a successful, stable school where we can perhaps absorb the capacity of trying to organise these things better than other schools in more challenging circumstances. That makes it sound like my school is not working in challenging circumstances. Very different years, but I'm also aware of colleagues of mine who are working in even more challenging circumstances. So, and we have things like we have large gyms that are currently not being used because when we've already decided to have PE lessons outside, and so we weren't expecting to use them. We have that space. The challenge we have though is that if we're doing the weekly testing with staff, we think we can just about make that happen using our internal staff because it's something that's predictable. It's perhaps something that would last an hour or two a week, and it happens at a particular time. I mentioned needing 10 people and somebody to lead it. It could be that on any given day you actually need no one because there would be nobody in close contact. There have been times in secondary schools over this term where several hundred children have been and adults have been identified as close contacts. So again, going back to my point about a sense of expectation and want everybody in teaching wanting to deliver to the very best, because you'd be mad to go into teaching if you didn't have that sense of drive and responsibility. I think we look at it and think, well, what if this goes wrong? You know, there's a lot of unknowns here. There are a lot of reliance on people's goodwill, of reliance on access to people being able to do things. But I think I'm optimistic. I want to believe we can make it happen. But we might have a situation in the morning where there are, say, 200 children who've been identified as a close contact, and that we would want to test them because we'd want them to be in school. Mm-hmm. The challenge of that is that in order to test 200 children, I'd need, even with 10 people, a good couple of hours to make that whole process work. So I'm sort of accepting that I will have children sort of hanging about in a process in the middle of my school who could possibly be considered to be positive with COVID. We're supposed to contain them in a number of different spaces. As I say, I believe that we want to be able to do it. We'll be able to do it as well as we can, but we also just need to, we will carry with us that sense of responsibility for making it go perfectly, getting every child into class. Our first lesson starts at 8:30 in the morning. So in an ideal world, I'd start testing children about 6:30 a.m., which seems unlikely. So we'll think it through. We'll see what happens. I think the key thing, the process for me has been over the last couple of days, talking about that sense of responsibility, we assume that we need to do everything. We assume that we will have to take on the worst case scenario. And I think the longer I've looked at the government guidance, the more I've realised that although there will be a sense of expectation upon us, there is quite a lot in there about not being expected to do it if you can't. And that's something that I'm going to try to communicate to my families and to my colleagues. We'll prioritise the key groups, but there may well be a situation where, even though we'd like to offer children testing for coming into school instead of isolation, if it's not feasible, we will just have to say that we can continue in using the same processes and the same expectations that we had before Christmas.
Well, David, very best of luck. I hope you do manage to get it work, and I hope you manage to get at least some of her break over Christmas after, I'm sure, what has been an incredibly hard term where this was the last thing you were anticipating or expecting. So
yeah, I sort of also sat there for the last term waiting for something on any given day. I find it's better if I'm expecting something terribly challenging to come through, then I'm not surprised. It's easier some days than others.
You're obviously a Boy Scout.
Trying to be, anyway. And I'm very lucky to have a wonderful team around me as well, because without them and without my colleagues, none of what we've been able to do would have been possible.
Of course. David, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
There we are. And an important point there at the end that if school leaders, schools don't feel able to turn themselves into testing centres, then the union, all of the unions, and in fact, the C of E, diocesan council, and all sorts of organisations have banded together to say, we will absolutely back you if you're feeling you're getting unduly pressured to do this. and it's not possible. So I think that's really, really important to get out there as well, that you can only do what you can do.
And it makes you wonder. I mean, this is a bit of a conspiracy theory here, so I'll just throw it out there. Was this deliberate to leave it to the end of term and just throw this at people so they have to try and make do and put something together without being able to moan about it too much, just a bit on Twitter and then get on with Christmas?
Well, Martin, it was good that you took the tin foil off before we went on air. Who knows? I mean, I hope not. I really hope not. I want to believe that everybody at the DFE is doing the very best they can to communicate and make things as easy as possible for teachers and schools. But they certainly haven't covered themselves in glory. It's very difficult to believe that.
There's about 10,500 people who work for the DFE and its associates. And I worked out that would take about 3 or 4 of them for each secondary school could actually do the testing for each school.
That would be very good of them to maybe Ofsted inspectors could go in and do a bit of testing
as well. Yeah, I mean, they're all sitting around, obviously, with
exactly.
Do apart from these things at the last minute.
There is, and David there talked about sort of trying to recruit volunteers from the community, and that it's very difficult when obviously there's a lot of goodwill out there, and people do want to support the government in trying to keep everybody safe and to contend with the pandemic that we're all experiencing. But it does sometimes feel that the risk and the effort is not evenly shared.
Yeah. I mean, frontline services, people who are in frontline services like security guards, teachers perhaps, but also obviously nurses, but everyone who's in sort of shop workers, they're the ones who are having the worst of it, so to speak.
Shoulder it. And absolutely. So you also this week you spoke to the head of curriculum at Bedale School, didn't you, Martin?
I did, but I think we're talking to Jane next, I thought. But
that's right. Jane Manzone, who I'm sorry, confused as always, but Jane, primary school teacher, and she's going to tell us about her on the ground in the trenches experience. Yeah,
particularly because this happened just after Greenwich, Islington and Waltham Forest declared that the schools were closing. So Jane's school closed and then didn't close. So we'll have a look at that.
Okay.
So tell me, what happened in March to you?
Oh, well, the day before school closed, I got sick. I suddenly, in the staff room, had a very high temperature. Somebody did the automatic temperature thing on and got sent home. And then they weren't testing then, obviously, were they? But I had every symptom under the sun. And then, the really high temperature and the pains everywhere and the nausea and all the other things. And then the cough that went on for ages. And I had 2 rounds of antibiotics to try and get rid of it. I can't remember what the second one was called. I'd never heard of it before, but I did get better eventually. But it took about 5 weeks, so I think I've had it. Hope.
It sounds very much. It sounded very much at the time that you had it. You've gone through the classic symptoms and some extra symptoms as well. Did it go for a long time afterwards? I mean, you say 5 weeks, which is a reasonably long time, but did you have any long COVID effects, perhaps?
I don't think so. No, not really. I don't know what are the long COVID symptoms, like just fatigue and things. I don't have time to be fatigued. I've just got to work. So.
Perhaps teaching is long COVID. It's just the fatigue of teaching is actually long COVID. It's been there for ages. Yeah. You were teaching from your bed, I heard.
Well, I was doing the online classroom pretty much, I think, from week 2 of being ill. But it started off gradual. We were finding our way with what online learning looked like. So I think to start with, I was uploading an English task and a maths task and a couple of other things. And then gradually, as time wore on, I started doing videos of myself and things like that. But it was, at the beginning, we didn't really know what we were doing. Nobody knew what we were doing. We went from teaching in a classroom to suddenly trying to teach on technology that we didn't use that much. You know, we didn't even use it for homework back in March. We use it for homework now, so we've used it for parents' evening. So I think out of COVID, we've teched ourselves up. That's the word. You know, we've learned how to use the technology a bit better. But there's a long way to go. I don't think we use it as well as it could be used, but we need training. You know, most of the time we're teaching in front of children, so like we don't normally teach via a computer.
And when the first lockdown, how many kids were coming into school over that time? Was it a large number or just a few?
Okay, so when schools reopened, it was for year 6, wasn't it? And year 1, was it? The little ones? And key workers. So we had 3 bubbles, and last year I was year 6. So we did a 2-week rota. So I had 9 children in on week 1, 9 on week 2, and the key worker children were still in their bubble, a different bubble. So we did, I had most of my children in. I think just 2 children from year 6 didn't come in during that reopening. But then the other classes, so years 4 and 5, they just had online provision.
And the kids who were in all the time, so the key worker kids, are they noticeably better at doing various subjects than other kids who perhaps have had a more disrupted time, have been home for longer, or is it not noticeable now?
I don't think so. Like, I know they keep saying, oh, children are 6 months behind or whatever this is. I don't see that. The noticeable difference was stamina when they came back. They were very tired and they weren't used to sitting in a chair and writing for, you know, a whole school day, and it took them quite a few weeks to get back into it. They've missed some curriculum, but not so much that they couldn't catch up. In my opinion, I don't think there's a huge, you know, like gap that they can't catch up in the next few months.
And how about reading? Are they reading books, or are they just now wedded to screens?
No, they're reading loads of books. Yeah, they still read.
And is there some sort of digital divide, do you think, with some of your kids in Islington who
Yeah.
come from slightly better off backgrounds than others?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a difference between children who have got, like, obviously good provision at home, and parents who have got the time and the wherewithal to sit down with them and help them upload things. But for the children who haven't, we either lent them devices or we provided kind of paper homework and paperwork. We did our best for those children. But there's obviously going to be a difference between the home situations of children.
And have you noticed anything with these pupils' well-being?
When they first came back, I was glad that they'd come back, because some of them looked like they couldn't have coped with much more time at home last year. They looked like they'd been cooped up, you know, but children bounce back. So I haven't noticed any real long-term psychological, emotional effects. I'm sure there are some. I'm sure there are some with some children, because it would have been very hard. You know, children in families, in flats with 6 or 7 of them. I know that there's been families where they've got grandparents in there, so that the children have been stuck inside because they didn't, you know, the parents were worried about the grandparents who were living with them. So, yeah, I think some families have been through a really, really tough time.
Right. And how about staff?
Staff? We're quite resilient as a race, teachers, I think. I mean, we have to be. You know, we get a lot thrown at us all the time. Things are always changing with exams, or just like anything that happens in society, we seem to get blamed for. You know, like let's add a new thing onto the curriculum and solve that problem. You know, and yeah, that's teachers. Teachers can sort that one out. So, you know, we're used to having things thrown at us, and COVID was like a prime example of that. You know, society's in chaos. The schools can work it out for themselves. We're not going to help them. We're going to make things like way harder for them. That's what I felt like. Like everything was super hard, and we were just guessing and second guessing, and how can we sort this out? How can we make things safe? You know, like every school had to do like a one-way system and hand sanitizing stations and bubbles, and work out how you were going to get provision for children who are at home and children who are at school. You know, like it was really complicated logistically. So, you know, hats off to the head teachers and the SLT and the people who are working behind the scenes to make things work. I mean, I'm on SLT, but it's a very small school and I'm full-time for class, so logistics weren't really what I was doing. But I know it's been really hard, you know, with free school meals and delivering stuff. It's been difficult because that's all on top of being teachers, which is hard enough at the best of times. You know, like delivering education to 30 children of disparate levels of ability and various needs and home life. That's hard enough without there being a pandemic. You know, that you have to invent new ways of reaching everyone. It's been ridiculous. Like, I'm more exhausted than I've ever been.
Right. Have you had to be jolly? I mean, more jolly than usual?
I mean, I am what I am. I take my job more lightheartedly the older I get. I know it's a serious job, but like, you know, you have to realise that life is not just school. So children have got home lives, and you know, the world is out there. You can't be super serious all the time. And I see that the young teachers, you know, who are very, very that's what I was like, you know, like everything was so important. But now, you know, you've got to go with the flow a little bit. I've been teaching 25 years nearly now.
You don't look it, dear, as they say. I mean,
no,
God.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of the kids, you mentioned there's a pandemic out there. Do they feel their childhood has been robbed from them? And these are sort of headlines that have been on the news, you know. Do they feel that, do you think?
No, they're fine. Yesterday we had a party. There's like this TikTok mashup thing they want to dance to. And they're like all screaming and shouting, just like normal children. Like, I haven't seen, you know, like they're not all here emotionally, like they're little children, and they still have fun, and they still see joy in life, and still try and get away with stuff, and, you know, and push the buttons if they want to, and run around in the playground. Like, they're just children. Still, thank goodness, mercifully.
Okay. There we are. Jane Manzone talking about her experience of long COVID. Have you had long COVID, Martin?
I was tired for a long time. I think that was mainly it. Perhaps that was post-viral. Perhaps it wasn't. I've got no particular idea. And bearing in mind, of course, I don't even know if I officially had it. So what can you say? But certainly it's something that a lot of people are now taking very seriously. And they're setting up, I think, long COVID wards or places for people who have long COVID to visit in hospital over a period of time. So it's a very serious thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
So it's good to see that kids are being jolly. Kids are doing their thing.
They're kids. Yeah. They're business as usual. They're exactly as hilarious as they always are. And utterly unfazed, I think, by and large, by the experience.
Yeah, I just wonder whether that's totally true. I suppose they don't know what they're missing, perhaps, but they must have some memory of it.
That's a bit naive. Because it's only a year ago that life was different. So I think they do know. I just think they adapt really, really quickly to the world as it is. And you know, and school as it is, and that I mean, John was saying this in his interview that the vast majority of children in schools have just actually been great and really helpful, and gone along with the demands made of them in the spirit of health and safety, and it's by and large been okay. Obviously, there's always some and we know about that. But kids are kids.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely been a call for mental health services more than perhaps as usual. I know quite a few school counsellors who are inundated and with long queues at their office, so to speak. So certainly there are effects out there perhaps that will come through in a few months' time. That
maybe no, and no, of course. Anyway, so let's hear next then. I think I've got the timing right now. We got Al McConville.
Yeah, how's COVID affect the independent sector?
Yeah, bless them. How has it affected them?
In terms of it being a boarding school, 2020, it's been one hell of a year. How's your COVID year been?
Well, it's been tough. We've been relatively lucky in the second lockdown to not send very many pupils home. We've slightly locked them up here. So part of our strategy for minimizing infection has been to keep them with us as much as possible and not have them traveling home to various places every weekend. So the students have tolerated very well spending more weekends here than they perhaps would ordinarily do so. And we've all had to work quite a lot harder to provide them with things to do at weekends. Normally there might be 40 or 50 students who stay in over a weekend, and this term it's been hundreds of students needing to find gainful employment or just have an eye kept on them. So that's been tough. As for everyone, requiring people to do social distancing when they're teenagers is pretty difficult. So we've done our bubbles and our pods, and it's gone okay. We've only had 2 confirmed cases amongst students, and because of our our own track and trace things, we haven't had to send that many people home. So we haven't had to send a year group home at any point. And we were able to invest in a testing machine ourselves, so we didn't have to have people isolating for days and days and days before we knew whether they had themselves got it. So that's also been helpful. So we're really thankful to have got away with it to the extent that we have this term, and I will persevere in roughly the same vein next term because it's worked, and I know that lots of boarding schools have had a nightmare. So whether it's our brilliance or just jolly good luck, I don't really know, but we'll take it either way.
How have the staff been? Have they been fit and healthy, or have you had to perhaps shield some staff?
Staff, we've been quite lucky with staff. We had one person who needed to shield, who was able to conduct an awful lot of his business electronically. And we've had a couple of cases, but again, because we've been social distancing very effectively, it didn't affect very many people at all. So they've been okay. The toughest thing for the staff has been the extra time they've had to put in providing things for the students in a yet longer week. And we've missed out on some of the things that we would ordinarily do that staff find very nourishing. So, we've talked a lot about the head, hand, heart stuff. Quite a lot of the activities that we would ordinarily want to do with kids, we haven't been able to do because they are cross year group activities, or it's impossible to social distance whilst doing them. So a big part of the BDEL's ethos that I haven't mentioned actually is people from different year groups engaging in activities together. So you haven't got the kind of year 10 blacksmithing and the year 11 blacksmithing separately. It's the blacksmithing opportunity where sixth formers mix with year 9s, and we haven't been able to do that stuff, which has been really frustrating. And the volunteering, which is a big part of what we do, again, going out and spending time with other communities that we can learn from and can help. We just haven't been able to do that. So that getting out and feeling like you're doing something away from school and that might be where you get your energy from missing that has been grim. So I derive a huge amount of my energy from some of the community activities that I take kids to do. So there's a charity with adults with learning difficulties that we normally go to every week, and we invite some pupils in from a pupil referral unit to do some outdoor work. And those are some of the most rewarding moments. So we've had to slightly accept, that it's the art of the possible, and we do what we can do, and sadly a bunch of really rich stuff falls by the wayside. But it's amazing how people can be creative in these times. So our music department in particular have put on the most extraordinary concerts using live streaming, and during the first lockdown, people in different continents, playing their parts and then splicing them together using technology to create superb concerts of people playing simultaneously around the world. So whilst some of the good stuff has had to be dropped, a whole load of new skills have been learnt, and some astonishing creativity has come out of it.
That's good to hear. In the first lockdown, did you go fully online?
We did go fully online, yeah. So everyone went home, and we all, like I guess everywhere, rapidly upskilled our IT selves. And again, we were lucky in that we had the infrastructure to just go straight to using Teams, and that was something that just had happened over the last couple of years. We were sort of preparing to use Teams in a big way, so it was all ready to roll. Although none of us had any training, so it was there, ready to go. But we hadn't yet used it. But turns out it's relatively intuitive. And then we upskilled as we went along. But we were very, very glad to get the kids back in front of us. I don't think anyone thought this was the future of Bedales.
And a holistic education is not necessarily easy online.
No. It was, I think we would have to just admit that it was narrower than we would have wanted it to be. And there was no one thought it was going to last as long as it did, I think, did they? And we gradually were more imaginative as we went along about what else we could do. So we continue to have assemblies and presentations by staff that were put online. We did one or two kind of joint fundraising activities that people could do no matter where they were. So we did a sort of virtual community walk from Syria to Steep, which is where Bedales is, to raise funds for the rural refugee network. So people get really impressively imaginative in these straitened times, and that's a model that we're gonna rerun. Having dreamt it up, this notion of sort of long virtual journeys together, so people can feel like they're participating in a kind of community-minded activity, whether they're here or not.
And the fact that you've been testing throughout has been helpful, and that's something perhaps that it sounds as though many secondary schools are going to be doing from January, certainly the fast flow test kits, and that's been useful, I hear. Yeah,
we haven't been doing mass testing because we've just got one machine that can do one test every 2 hours. So we only test people when they have symptoms. And it may well be that there's been a bunch of asymptomatic cases that we haven't picked up and that teenagers can live with. But it's been helpful to be able to say that certain people haven't got it, which that's mostly what it comes back with.
And you haven't got any mink on your farm, have you?
No mink that we're admitting to, no.
That's good to hear. Look, it's been a real joy to speak to you today, and all I can say now, I suppose, is coming up. You finished term. It's coming up to the end of term for many teachers as well. Is to wish you a happy Christmas, and I hope a better New Year.
Thanks, Martin. Likewise, really good to talk.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Wow.
Oh, there we go. That's from Bedales. Bedales have a farm, by the way. That's why I was talking about mink. They have their own farm. They have seemingly their own testing machine as well, which is perhaps quite a useful thing to have. Perhaps they could also perhaps send some staff out to other schools to do a bit of testing around the neighbourhood.
That'd be nice. Giving something back.
Yeah, walking all the way from Syria and things, virtual walking. But it's a fascinating interview. Please do subscribe, and you'll get the whole range of the interview, including insights into Trigger. Yes, Trigger from Only Fools and Horses.
And Al talks about the bespoke assessment system they have at Bedales, doesn't he?
Yes, indeed. Yes. So there we go into talking about alternatives to the GCSEs, and he's part of a campaigning group who are looking to change our assessment system in England.
Right, so well worth watching, well worth subscribing to make sure. And Martin, a couple of people have been in touch to say that they're a bit confused about how to subscribe, because in order to subscribe, you have to have a YouTube account, and they've been saying, but I'm not a YouTube provider. I'm not sure. I don't upload videos. But you don't need to, do you, Martin?
You don't need to become a channel. You can just stay there very quietly and just get content sent to you around your interest areas by subscribing to not just our channel. There's loads of
all
other
the channels that you like. And if you do that, then obviously I think probably there's some sort of algorithm which sends you stuff, which is probably good. I don't know, but anyway, subscribe. Stop making excuses. Subscribe. Right. So the last thing we've got a little bit more from John Tomsett, and this is going to be our John Cat section. John Cat show sponsors. Thank you very much, John Cat.
Our Christmas treat. Our Christmas treat as well. Absolutely, our Christmas treat. So thanks, John Cat, for all the money. Much appreciated. More, please. But here's John Tomsett again talking about his book, his special Christmas treat book, and published by John Cat.
John, you've written 2 books this year. Published 2 books.
3. I've got 3. I've got another one coming out in February. It'll be 3.
Wow. Okay. So I know one of them's which I've had a look at, and it's great. Your book on getting staff to thrive, which you co-wrote with colleague John Gutley.
Yeah.
But a bit of a departure, and those of you that have followed your writing won't be entirely surprised by this.
No.
A book on fishing.
Well, it was interesting because it came from being in Waterstones 4 years ago, almost to the day. Right, and in Waterstones they have a table of 10 quid books for men, right? Stocking fillers, and I thought you need a fishing book in there.
And there wasn't one.
There wasn't one. Of course, there wasn't one. So I thought. So I've been thinking about it for several years, and about 3 or 4 summers ago, I caught my first sea trout, right, which is a big gig. It's a big gig. I don't know if you've watched the Bob Mortimer and Paul Whitehouse Christmas special that was on at the weekend, but they were fishing the river where I caught my first sea trout, the river at the Yorkshire-esque. And the weekend they were there, I was a mile down the river catching my first ever salmon, and I didn't know they were there. But it's really interesting because I wanted to see if I could recreate the utter thrill of catching that fish and the experience of it in words. So I read Shooting an Elephant by Orwell, because I think that's really brilliant of the graphic feeling of watching an animal close up. But
some Hemingway.
Sorry,
some Hemingway.
Yeah, you've got but Hemingway's not as graphic as that. I always think that Orwell one is amazing, and the breathing.
I've not read that Shooting Elephant.
The breathing, the animal breathing as it's dying, it's just really graphic. But I couldn't find a medium, how to write it. And then I was reading a book called Solar Bones. Have you come across that by Mike McCormack?
No.
It was up for the Booker Prize about 3 years ago in the long list. And it's an Irish novel, Irish writer, and he writes it all in one sentence, 265 pages, one sentence.
Okay.
And then I thought, that's how I've got to write this thing about.
There's a Tim Perks book that does that.
I don't know it, but it's a really great book. So I thought, that's how I've got to write this thing about catching the sea trout. So I worked all summer on 470 words, all summer, and then I got it just right. So I'd seen this gap in the market for a fishing book, like a diary, and then I'd written this one piece. And then I sat down and wrote notes about all the fishing things I'd done that I could write about, and sent it off to John Catt. And Alex at John Catt said, "Well, we've done a few fishing books in the past. Your books are your books are going really well. I like your writing. We'll give it a go." Right? I think it's utterly a vanity project, if I'm honest.
So it's not. Is it not on the men's gift tables in Waterstones?
I couldn't get it into Waterstones.
Oh,
I've even been in Waterstones giving them copies. But what was interesting was, it was going to be a diary, but that would just keep it just for this year. So it's a journal.
Yeah, like an almanac, isn't it?
It has 52 tales in it.
Right.
And every tale is between. I wanted to make it between 470 and 480 words long, and the average is 476.1. Right, and that takes some art to do, right? So getting a tale that is complete in that few words 52 times, there's an incredible amount of art in it.
Yeah.
When it happened. And then my mate, who's a panel beater in a car repair shop, did the illustrations. He's a brilliant artist. And the illustrations make it. So there's 52 illustrations, and all my mates who feature in it, if they feature in a certain story, I've had the original print framed of the illustration, and then stuck the story on the back as a gift.
Oh.
So it's been great. It's been.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I haven't read it, but I think of all the people who write in the sphere of education, you are by a country mile the most thoughtful, careful writer. I always enjoy your reading what you've written. So even though I've never fished in my life, I'm sure I will read it. But
if you give me your address, I'll get you a copy sent.
For two lucky readers, for viewers, if you, we're gonna send out in time for Christmas, so we're not going to wait till next week. All you have to do is email us at hello@wastingyourtime.co.uk. The first two that come in, we will send a copy of John. What's it called again, John?
It's called An Angler's Journal: A Lifetime's Fishing in 52 Tales.
Brilliant. So if you want one of those for the man in your life,
or woman. The angler in your life.
The angler in your life. Absolutely. Thanks ever so much.
All right. Thank you.
Martin. Oh, there we are.
Oh, there it is.
It's not really a prize draw. We don't have to draw them. They just have to be the first two. But I do, for our prize draw, we interviewed some people about the Research Ed leadership book, Tom Rees and Jen Barker, and we never gave away the copies. So Martin, if your hat is there, if you pick out a couple of lucky winners who could win a copy of the Research Ed Guide to Leadership, we could send you those. If you get in touch with us at hello@wastingyourtime.co.uk.
Right, the first one is Tingarth, Tyngarth. Tingarth.
Get in touch.
Oh, and can't.
Was that you, Martin?
Can't have that sort of thing going on.
No, outrageous.
This one just says, it is a name, Emma Salter. Emma.
If you'd like a copy of Research Ed Guide to Leadership, all you have to do is email us at hello@wastingyourtime.co.uk, and we will send it to you, hopefully before Christmas. Okay, that's a wrap, I think, Martin.
That's a wrap. So it's happy Christmas to everyone.
Happy Christmas.
Don't forget to waste your time looking over our back catalogue, all the shows that we've put out over the year. There's a lot of them. We only started in August, and there's already a huge amount of interviews.
Disgraceful amounts of content on our channel, isn't there? Well, there'll be a short hiatus over the Christmas break, but we will be back wasting hours and hours of your time in January. So I hope you come back and join us then. Goodbye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You can cry and cry until your eyes are red. You can toss and tumble on a sleepless bed, but you're wasting your time trying to lose the blues. Lose the blues, lose the blues. You can cry and cry until your eyes are red. You can toss and tumble on a sleepless bed, but you're wasting your time trying to lose the blues. Lose the blues.